Have you ever had that nagging, almost inexplicable, feeling that the life you're living isn't really yours? As if everything around you had a veneer of normality, but inside, something was off? If so, perhaps this discomfort isn't a mistake. Perhaps it's the rare symptom that only the chosen ones feel. A silent, subtle, but profoundly transformative sign that announces the beginning of something that many spend their entire lives trying to avoid, the true awakening of the soul. According to Carl Jung, this strangeness is not a breakdown. It is a spiritual reorganization, an internal click that begins the process of individuation, when the ego begins to give way for the self, your true self, to take the helm of existence. And the most curious thing? Almost no one talks about it. Or worse, many people feel it, but believe they are broken. But they are not. They are awakening. This video is not for everyone. It is for those who feel that there is something bigger going on inside them, even if they cannot name it. It is for those who no longer fit into the same circles, the same conversations, the same expectations. It is for those who have a feeling that their soul is restless, and that they did not come into the world just to repeat patterns, but to break cycles and guide others along the path of inner truth. Before we dive into this profound universe of self-knowledge and spiritual awakening, I want to extend a sincere invitation to you. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and leave your like. This way, you will remain connected to content that enlightens, touches the soul, and awakens those who already feel that they do not belong to the ordinary. Today, you will understand how this rare symptom initiates a sequence of internal changes, from ego collapse to sacred solitude, from silent rupture to the life mission that still has no name but pulsates within you. And if something inside you has already begun to move, this may be your moment to listen and remember, because what you're feeling is not confusion, it's activation. Have you ever looked around and had the strange impression that you were living someone else's life? Not because anything is objectively wrong, but because, internally, everything seems disconnected. This subtle sensation, often ignored or muffled, can be what we call a rare symptom. A spiritual click that doesn't show up on tests, but that transforms your entire perception of reality. It's as if a quiet part of your soul begins to whisper, "This isn't all there is to it." Carl Jung, a master of the psyche and soul, described this phenomenon as the beginning of the process of individuation. It is not an outburst, but rather an internal reorganization, a call from the soul to break with inherited patterns, social masks, and paths that no longer correspond to its inner truth. Jung saw this moment as sacred, even if disconcerting, and he knew those who feel this inner emptiness are, in fact, about to fill their lives with purpose. The most challenging part is that this symptom does not come with an instruction manual. Many people believe they are experiencing an existential crisis, when in fact they are facing a soul awakening. This discomfort, this restlessness that no one around seems to understand, is actually a spiritual sign that you are ready to abandon the false self. The chosen ones go through this sooner or more intensely because they carry within themselves a mission that is still in the activation phase. Perhaps you have felt this silently, trying to name an emptiness that is not depression but a lack of meaning, an emotional detachment that is not sadness but a spiritual transition. This is the point where the old no longer serves, and the new has not yet arrived. Jung called this the crossroads of the soul, and it is in this space between two worlds that true conscious awakening happens. If you feel like you're living on autopilot, as if you're following a script that no longer represents you, perhaps this is the beginning of your journey as one of the chosen ones. This restless soul that lives within you doesn't want to destroy your life. It wants to reveal your true nature. And so it begins by dislodging you from the structures that no longer fit. The good news? You're not broken. You're being called. This rare, silent, and often lonely symptom could be the beginning of your reconnection with your deepest self. And while it may feel confusing right now, each discomfort is actually a moving piece on the board of your chosen journey. This is when everything starts to change internally. What once seemed comfortable starts to tighten. What you tolerated effortlessly now exhausts you. A relationship that was once stable becomes a stage for silence. Work that once made sense becomes a burden. But be careful. This is not a collapse. It is spiritual deconstruction. According to Carl Jung, The soul has its own mechanisms of awakening, and the first of these is discomfort. What seems like disorder is actually a sacred reordering. The soul begins to deconstruct everything that was built on fragile structures, external expectations, and familiar repetitions. This is the moment when the chosen ones feel the ground shake, not because they have lost their way, but because they are being prepared for a new foundation. The old life, no matter how functional it seemed, begins to crumble, revealing an inner emptiness that screams for meaning. This is where many think they are failing, but they are not. They are just stopping pretending. Relationships begin to change. The cycle of friendships changes. Loved ones drift away without explanation. Activities that once excited you now seem empty. Jung would say that this movement is the soul pulling you inward, even if the appearance is of loss or chaos. It is the beginning of spiritual recalibration, a moment when your vibration is no longer compatible with the old scenario. And yes, it hurts, but it also frees. At this stage, what was once a reference point disappears. You begin to doubt everything, your choices, your path, even your identity. But this is a sign that the old version is being dissolved to make way for spiritual authenticity. This is where the first glimpses of the spiritual call appear, even if nameless and formless. You can no longer force smiles or remain where your soul does not breathe. The inner truth begins to pull you like a magnet. It may seem like the universe is taking everything away from you, but in reality, it is taking away everything that is preventing you from being you. Deconstruction is the first step in inner transformation, and this only happens to those who have the energetic structure to sustain this deep cleansing. It is no coincidence. The chosen ones go through this more intensely, because the deeper the mission, the stronger the realignment process. So, if everything is falling apart around you, look inside with courage. The soul does not destroy out of vanity. It deconstructs to free. And on this path, each rupture is an invitation to return. Because before building the new, it is necessary to cleanse the old. And maybe, just maybe, you are exactly where you should be. At the beginning of your sacred reconstruction, there comes a point where maintaining appearances becomes exhausting. You smile, but you feel like you're no longer there. You talk, but everything seems rehearsed. You go to the usual places, but your body is present while your soul isn't. That's when what Carl Jung called the rupture with the persona happens, the mask we wear to be accepted in the social theater. For the chosen ones, this fall of the mask is not optional. It's inevitable, because the soul cries out for spiritual authenticity, and there's no character that can resist that call. For years, you may have lived trying to be what was expected of you, the exemplary son, the tireless professional, the approachable friend. But now, all of that seems like a theater in ruins. The existential crisis sets in, not because you don't know who you are, but because you finally realize that you never had the space to be. It is a painful and, at the same time, liberating turning point. The collapse of the ego is not the end. It is the first crack through which the light of truth begins to enter. This is when the silent refusal to continue pretending emerges. You begin to say no, without justifying yourself. You back away from empty commitments. You become silent where you once argued. This is not arrogance, it is a comeback. Jung said that in order to become who we really are, we must have the courage to stop being what others expect. And that is exactly what begins to happen. The social self collapses, but the essential self begins to awaken. People around you may find it strange. They may say that you have changed, that you are acting strangely, that you have distanced yourself. And you may even try to explain, but how can you put into words a spiritual transition that does not fit into logic? It is a moment of solitude, but also of encounter, because, for the first time, you are listening to yourself. And in this frightening silence, there is inner truth. The character may have protected you for a while, but now, he is limiting you. Spiritual symptoms intensify: unexplained fatigue, energetic sensitivity, rejection of noisy environments, need for silence. The body begins to reject what the soul can no longer tolerate. And each choice, each gesture, begins to be guided by a new criterion. Is this true for me? It is not about being better. It is about being whole. And this wholeness often begins with a rupture. So if you feel like you're falling apart, take a breath. It's not destruction, it's revelation. The mask is falling, and while that may be scary, it's also a sign that you're finding yourself. And as Jung said, you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming conscious of the darkness. And that's exactly what the chosen ones do. They walk through the shadows until they find the light again. When the soul awakens, it doesn't ask for permission. It reorganizes everything. And one of the first areas affected is relationships. Friends drift away. Relatives start to no longer understand your choices. Conversations become shallow. Connections become forced. And then comes that bitter feeling of rejection. But is that really true? Or is what you are experiencing a spiritual recalibration? Carl Jung would say that it's not about being rejected, but about being redirected to connections that truly vibrate at the same frequency as your soul. The rupture in this process is not only inevitable, it is necessary. The chosen ones are not born to belong to any environment. There is something in you that carries too much truth to remain where there is play, appearance, and control. That is why, when the awakening of the soul intensifies, the people around you begin to find it strange. Some move away. Others become uncomfortable, not because you did anything wrong, but because your energy no longer fits there. This social disconnection can hurt more than you would like to admit. The feeling of being alone, of not being understood, of having nowhere else to rest your heart. But this emptiness also holds something precious: clarity. The silence of those who leave makes room for the echo of your own soul. And it is in this echo that you begin to hear clearly what has always been there: your inner truth. It is in this clean space that the new can be born. The soul needs space to expand. And sometimes, that means letting go of bonds that were a shelter, but also a prison. Jung said that every process of individuation involves sacred solitude, a kind of isolation that is not sadness, but a need for alignment. And that is difficult for those who have always been used to molding themselves to fit in. But remember, you are not broken. You are in transition. You may be being called to pause, to step back, to be silent. You may need to stop trying to fix what you are forcing and allow the flow of the new to come. Trust. What feels like loss is liberation. What feels like rejection is opening. The spiritual symptoms you feel, the discomfort, the distance, the need for solitude, are clear signs that your soul is leading you to new encounters, more authentic, more alive, more yours. And in that moment of silence, perhaps you will realize something that changes everything. You are not being left behind. You are being called forward. You are being taken from where your soul does not grow, to be planted where your light can flourish. And, like every redirection, this one also seems like a rupture. But later on, you will understand, it was a beginning. Over time, the process stops being just psychological or emotional. It becomes physical. Sounds that once went unnoticed start to bother you. Busy environments drain your strength. Some conversations seem draining. Foods that were once normal now make you feel unwell. This is not a whim. It is your body getting in tune with your expanding soul. Carl Jung once said that the body and the psyche are reflections of each other. When the soul awakens, the body responds. The chosen ones often experience this energetic sensitivity in a very intense way. It's as if your skin is thinner, your heart is more open, and your senses are sharper. Suddenly, you perceive the energy of a place without anyone telling you anything. You feel the weight of a word before it's even said. This hypersensitivity is a gift, but it's also a challenge. Because the world continues to be noisy, fast-paced, and exaggerated. And your system can't tolerate so much noise anymore. It is common at this stage to seek the opposite of what was once part of the routine. More silence, more nature, more presence. Urban spaces seem aggressive. Screens tire. Superficiality weighs on you. And your body begins to crave simplicity and healing silence. It is as if your soul is cleansing itself of excess, recalibrating your senses, preparing the ground for a new way of inhabiting the world, with more connection and less distraction. Many people confuse this phase with a kind of mild depression or emotional fatigue, but it is not. It is the body freeing itself from everything that is no longer in tune with its new vibration. Jung would understand this as part of the individuation process, in which the body becomes an instrument of perception of the soul. When something does not vibrate with your truth, the body warns you. When something truly nourishes you, it relaxes. The body does not lie. If you feel more fragile, more tired, more selective, celebrate it. It's a sign that you're awakening to your spiritual sensitivity, and that's a gift. Of course, you'll need to adapt, perhaps reduce stimuli, review routines, prioritize calm environments. But all of this will be a way of honoring the new being that's emerging from within you. Because now, every gesture matters. Every energy choice counts. Don't beat yourself up for not being able to live the way you used to. Don't try to force a vitality that no longer suits you. Accept that your body is becoming more aware, more intuitive, more alive. And this is not a limitation, it is a guide. Your body also translates what you feel. It is speaking. And if you listen carefully, you will realize it is not resisting, it is showing you the way. Have you ever found yourself wondering why certain goals that once motivated you now simply don't make sense anymore? The race for success, validation, recognition, all of this seems tiring, distant, empty. This emptiness is not a sign of discouragement. It is a sign of transition. For the chosen ones, this change happens sooner. The ego begins to lose strength, and the soul begins to gain voice. Carl Jung said that the true meaning of life only reveals itself when we stop living for the world and start living for the self, the center of the soul. At this stage, it's no longer about proving something to someone. It's about living something that has a real purpose. The shine of a position, the weight of a title, the idea of getting there, all of that starts to lose importance. In its place comes an almost silent but deep need to serve, not out of obligation, but out of meaning. Out of a life mission. You feel like you can no longer waste time on anything that doesn't build something real. Not because someone told you to, but because your soul is screaming for direction. This can be confusing, sometimes even scary. After all, how can you give up your ambition in a world that idolizes achievements? How can you say no to opportunities that anyone would accept with their eyes closed? But the call of the soul's awakening does not bow to external logic. It speaks on another frequency. And one of Jung's most impactful phrases helps us understand this. The privilege of life is to be who you really are. And who you are does not need to compete. You need to fulfill your truth. With this shift, the spiritual symptoms intensify. A strange calm emerges, an almost uncomfortable detachment. You begin to let go of excesses, of busy schedules, of empty goals, of inherited objectives. You stop chasing and start asking yourself, where is my soul taking me? And, little by little, you discover that the path is already within you, just waiting for you to have the courage to listen. This doesn't mean giving up everything overnight. It means refocusing your efforts. What was once done for recognition is now done for contribution. What was done for status is now done for truth. And that changes everything. Because when the ego gives in, the mission begins. It may not yet have a name. It may not have a form. But it is already pulsing with strength. And the chosen ones know, it's not about winning. It's about making an impact with authenticity. So if you're finding yourself no longer trying to prove anything, but rather serving something greater, trust. That's not weakness, it's spiritual strength. It's not giving up, it's alignment. And just when everyone else thinks you're losing yourself, you might finally be finding yourself. At this point in the journey, silence is no longer an inconvenience. It becomes necessary. There comes a time when even the most well-intentioned conversations ring hollow, and the most lively encounters fail to fill that space within you that is in full transformation. This is when the chosen ones withdraw, not out of sadness, nor out of pride, but out of necessity. Jung called this withdrawal the integration phase, a time when the soul needs to assimilate all that it is becoming. This sacred solitude can be scary at first. After all, we live in a world that values exposure, constant interaction, and uninterrupted connectivity. But there is a depth that can only be revealed in silence. And the chosen one knows this, even if he or she cannot explain it. It is in this emptiness that things begin to make sense. It is there that one hears what the soul has been whispering for years. It is not absence, it is presence. And this presence transforms. Jung said that the encounter with the self, with the true I, only happens when we distance ourselves from the noise. And this distancing is more internal than external. You may continue to live with the same people, work in the same place, live in the same space, but internally, something has retreated. You no longer get involved in everything. You no longer respond to everything. You no longer get lost in excess. There is a new clarity guiding your decisions. a kind of invisible but accurate compass. During this phase, it is common for doubts to arise. Am I isolating myself too much? Am I distancing myself from the world? But soon you realize, you are not distancing yourself from the world. You are getting closer to yourself. And this internal movement is what allows the integration of your new consciousness, like a silent gestation in which the soul is preparing something great, but which still needs time, warmth, and seclusion to be born. The spiritual symptoms remain subtle but constant: a desire to be alone, a deep sleep, a repulsion towards superficiality, strange sensations when visiting certain places. This is not regression. It is spiritual maturity. The soul is filtering what comes in and what goes out. It is cleaning out the excess. It is reorganizing the temple. And like every profound process, this requires space, internal and external. So if you feel like you need more silence, more nature, more time for yourself, listen to this. Respect this, not as an escape, but as care. Because often, it is in solitude that healing happens. It is in this apparent emptiness that the seeds of the mission are planted. And only those who have the courage to step away from distraction are able to hear what really matters. The sound of the soul saying, in a low voice, "We are almost ready." After the whole process, the symptom, the deconstruction, the collapse of the ego, the silence, the solitude, something begins to emerge. It has no form yet, no name, but it has power. It is a silent certainty that you are not here by chance. It is not a rational idea. It is a feeling that pulses within. Carl Jung would call this the call of the self, the deepest part of the soul taking over. And for the chosen ones, this call is urgent. Don't expect it to come with a badge or a fancy title. The mission, at this point, is still an intuition, a path that reveals itself step by step, like a road that appears as you walk. The soul knows, but the ego doesn't understand. And that's okay. You don't need guarantees to follow. You just need the courage to trust, because what you feel is not an illusion. It is the awakening of the chosen ones. And no one can hear that call for you. Many people will continue living without ever noticing this whisper. Others will even feel it, but will ignore it. As for you, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer occupy spaces that make no sense. You can no longer remain silent in the face of what moves you. This restlessness that grows within you is your soul saying, remember who you are. And even without knowing your final destination, you know there is no going back. This nameless mission can begin with small actions, a gesture of compassion, a deep conversation, a simple but soulful project. Jung said that the self does not seek glory, it seeks inner fulfillment. So don't worry about appearing grand. Worry about being true. Because when you are in alignment with your soul, even the smallest gesture becomes divine service. And this is where it all comes together. The spiritual click, the ego collapse, the spiritual recalibration, the sacred solitude, the spiritual authenticity. Each step has brought you to this point. And even though your mission is still taking shape, the call is already echoing. And if you've listened this far, it's because you already know. You have been set apart, not excluded. You have been prepared, not rejected. You have been called to live with purpose, not distraction. So trust. The mission may not have a name now, but it already has a bearer. And that bearer is you. There is no need to run. There is no need to prove yourself. You just need to listen, honor, and keep awakening. Because sometimes all the soul needs is space to remember. And you have already started. You have come this far because, on some level, something inside you has already begun to awaken. Maybe you don't know the name of it yet, or where it will lead, but you already feel that you can no longer live on autopilot. That pretending is costly, that ignoring the call only prolongs the pain, and that there is an invisible, silent, and profound force repositioning you towards your truth. No matter where you are on your journey, whether it's the beginning of discomfort, the middle of confusion, or the silence of rebuilding, one thing is certain: you are not alone. And more than that, you are not broken. What you are experiencing is sacred. It is the process of remembering who you truly are. And as Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. Accept it. Allow yourself to experience what is blossoming. And remember, every discomfort is a gentle nudge from your soul, leading you to the place where you can finally be whole. The mission may not yet be clear, but the path is being prepared. And often, it all starts here, with sincere listening, a spiritual click, and a new look at your own story. If any of these truths touched a place in you that was dormant, pay attention. Comment below. Do you feel like you are awakening to something that no one around you seems to understand? Your sharing could be the sign that another chosen one needed to remember who they really are. And before you continue your journey, I invite you. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and leave your like. Here, each video is a space for reconnection. A reminder that the chosen ones are not lost. They are awakening.